fearless, provocative,
straight talking. We will say it like it really is.
With dignity and respect.
Committed to free speech and common sense.
Upbeat and entertaining.
Straight talking and direct.
We may agitate each other and you.
Heartfelt and passionate.
Thought-provoking, provocative and controversial.
Fearless and truthful.
Welcome to The Pledge, the programme committed to provocative and fearless debate. This week, June's eavesdropping on Harry and Rio. Greg's in a state of disbelief, and it's not about Sam Allardyce, at least I don't think it is. Emma wishes Cameron had a bit more, class. And Michelle has a few questions about who does the photocopying. But first, it's my turn. Make no mistake, Europe is currently involved in a war. And tragically, on this occasion, it is a war against an enemy within, and it's a war about liberty. There have been some truly horrific attacks over the last couple of weeks. In France, a teenager who twice tried to flee to Syria and whose only check on movement was an electronic tag slit the throat of a Catholic priest during Mass. In Germany, a failed asylum seeker killed himself after failing to detonate a suicide bomb at a music festival. That's just two among many. Fortunately, I'm not a politician, so I don't need to come up with a supposed solution. What I can come up with, though, is this: a battle plan. 1. Failed asylum seekers, such as the suicide bomber in Germany, are to be deported instantly. 2. If a would-be attacker born here or elsewhere wants to go to Syria, why should we stop them? And 3. All new arrivals must be checked and processed in weeks rather than years. It won't win the war, but it could help save lives.
Your battle plan obviously contains lots of logic. Some of those things people think will be happening already. But what I don't understand is where you said two among many in terms of the attacks, you seem to be laying these attacks at the feet of asylum seekers.
Not in all cases, but in some.
But in fact, the evidence is the opposite of that they are the minority of people committing these attacks. And actually, the people who are committing these attacks, by and large, just to put some facts into this debate, which I think is important, are homegrown of that country. So, for instance, the man who killed 84 people in Nice was a Tunisian-born Frenchman.
Well, that doesn't make him homeborn.
The 3 suicide bombers who blew themselves up in Brussels were all Belgian nationals.
He was born in Tunisia.
No, in the sense of they live in those countries, they have a right to be there, and they haven't been failed in a system called asylum.
What I never understand with you...
No. So sorry, can I get to the end of the point? I'm not a bleeding heart left-winger. I like facts.
And you've just admitted that the guy in Nice was born in Tunisia and then is now dual national French-Tunisia. Well, he's not anymore, he's dead. If we can just stop one priest having his throat cut, or festival goers in a festival in Ansbach, why wouldn't we do that? Why do you immediately see...
The issue is more complex than you're making out. The issue is far more complex.
But why don't we tackle the easy marks?
The French officials have admitted themselves they do not know how to handle this. They don't know how to handle the fact that these are lone attacks, often people self-radicalising in their bedrooms, and then you've got us doing the PR of the ISIS machine by rolling it on news channels like this, not couching it in facts, and then ISIS come along and go, yeah, he was one of us. And half the time they weren't even linked.
Are you seriously suggesting we don't run video, and we don't run the story, and we don't put pictures up? Because that's what Le Monde, the French newspaper, is doing.
You're part of the problem that is creating a climate of fear, when actually we have an issue where governments do not know how to deal with this. This is something that countries like Israel have been dealing with since they were created. They have people who are self-aware all the time. They immediately assume you are not safe at a big, large gathering. And outside synagogues, whenever I go to one, I'm questioning within an inch of my life, security-wise, which I'm very sorry to say is going to have to become the case when we are dealing with loners who live within communities, often with legal passports.
Are you honestly telling me you're happy that in the case of that priest in Normandy, the only security you had on that bloke was an electronic tag that appeared wasn't even working?
Of course not.
Thank you.
But he was mentally ill.
I'm going to back Nick off on this.
Don't disgrace people who are mentally ill by saying that.
He was
that is so unfair.
Unwell.
Because people who are genuinely mentally ill do not go around slitting the throats of priests. Do not use that, because it's not fair with people who have mental health. That is just a cop-out. He was mentally ill. He's a barbaric murderer. He's not mentally ill. It's unfair to people in this country who have mental health issues.
How could you say that?
Michelle.
Sorry. sorry, you have just completely
that's wrong.
made out.
You can't make an excuse about him being mentally ill. That's not fair to folk watching this who are mentally ill.
Can you just... I'm sorry.
It's just not fair.
Calm down for a moment. You have
He's a barbaric killer.
I have not made an excuse.
You just said he's mentally ill.
Sorry,
but
it's
Nick,
part
there's
of
not
the
only just
fabric.
one type of mental illness, though.
No,
Right.
OK,
So
Michelle.
Yes, he's mentally ill.
Let's park the mental illness thing for a bit and come back to your point, Nick, which is we're talking about people that are asylum seekers.
In some instances.
Yeah, in some instances.
In fewer instances.
Yes, but
The word some will take
regardless,
care of
we're
that.
talking about... That's the group of people that we're currently talking about, to your point, Nick. Now, I agree with you on all three of those points.
Good.
I feel that if somebody... What worries me about all these terrorist incidents at the moment is how many of them are known to the forces. For whatever reason, to the security services. So many of these people are known. And I completely wholeheartedly agree with you on all of the points, but specifically, if you've got failed asylum, get out. What are you even doing here? If you're not supposed to be here, then you shouldn't be here, full stop.
I don't disagree with that.
The people that are talking about going to Syria, again, I wholeheartedly agree
great.
with you.
Fantastic.
I do not understand why we have this desperate need to stop people who want to go to Syria and go and fight with IS. If that's what you want to do, go away. And what we need to do is we need to stop them ever coming back in. And that's my worry, that are we good enough, if those people choose to go over there, are we good enough to prevent them coming back in? I'm not sure.
Nick, you'll remember internment.
Yep.
When the British government decided to intern anyone they thought could be involved with the IRA. And what did we do? We politicised another generation of Catholics into taking violent action. I mean, clearly, our whole system for dealing with people coming into this country and we're not claiming asylum has to be speeded up.
Yes.
It has to be faster.
Yes.
It's not a very effective, efficient system, and the legal system needs to be changed and structured. But you have to be very careful not to take instant judgments because of what's happening. What worries me about what's happening is that it's now so regular that sometime in the next few weeks a similar thing will happen and it won't make the front pages. It'll be somewhere in the back of the paper because it's become the norm. And that's the really scary bit to think about this, the speed, how often it's happening. But you've got to have a thought-out policy. And I'm not sure you actually ever can deal with it, in truth. I think if you've got that many people who could become radicalised, not because they've been to Syria to be trained or anything else, but because they're fed up with society and life.
If they want to go to Syria, let them go. Why do we try and fetch them back?
I think
Let them.
Why? I'm with Emma on this because I agree something has to be done. You know, we have a horrific situation where there are young men who are homeborn, who have, if we're looking at this country, have British passports, who have been radicalised for whatever reason. But what you cannot forget, Nick, is there are systems in other European countries who have the same issues we have, such as Denmark, who are actually getting results in terms of de-radicalising these young men. Because the issue we have, Michelle, is, yes, you can say, we're not going to stop them leaving, but they are citizens. So we're not in a position to be able to revoke their citizenship, so they will be able to come back. So what we have to do is figure out how do we infiltrate these groups to prevent these young men becoming radicalised in the first place. And it is possible to do. We just don't know how to do it yet.
June,
So I think, like Emma said, we are muddling a selection of problems. So if we're looking at the case of an asylum seeker, that is not the norm. This was a person who did have mental issues, who, of course, should have been sent home. The system failed in that situation.
As it failed in France.
As it failed
in
in France.
Given a bloke a tag.
But if we're talking about homegrown radicalisation, we need to figure out some sort of mechanism to actually undo the issue. And, you know, I grew up in an area where I went to a college where some of the boys that were in our college became radicalised. This is like 20 years ago.
Radicalised for what? In what way? For what?
Islamic extremism.
Really?
Yeah. And
20 years ago?
Yeah. And our teachers, and at the time no one knew what that was, and our teachers had no idea how to deal with it. You know, these were boys that we were all friends with, you know, we hung out with, and over a summer they started going to a local mosque and stopped talking to the rest of us. And we saw this change. We didn't know what to do. The teachers didn't know what to do.
Do you think they know what to do today?
No, I still don't think they would.
That's terrible. So 2 decades on, we haven't moved forward.
And now it is a national problem.
But what?
But what do you think?
What do you think?
What do you think?
What do you think?
I mean, you're assuming there's a solution. What?
There has to be.
Well, no, you said at the top of your thing, you don't have to make those solutions.
Who would be a politician
in
now?
Denmark,
Who would be a politician
Greg,
now?
in Denmark, there's a wonderful policeman called, I think it's Stefan Nielsen, and he has a brilliant programme that's managed to de-radicalise a lot of young boys.
I think, sadly, June, while we're in much agreement about the muddying of the waters here, is that what French officials that I saw said, which I really struck a chord with me, is that we don't know how to get to people now because we don't know who they are.
Yeah.
Right? So we used to be in a situation where we could target areas and say, let's prevent.
But they knew the killer of that priest.
They know most of
should
these
have done
hackers.
more.
Yeah, well, that's
He was
They know
allowed
most
out
of them.
between certain
Great.
hours.
How many like him?
Well,
Probably
in France,
hundreds and
do you know-
hundreds.
Do you know how many people are on the S list
Yeah.
in France? 10,400.
So you're suggesting they could have done something at about 10,400?
Well, no, but God, imagine, we've got to do something.
well-
No, but it's easy to say this horrible man went in and killed a priest. We knew he existed.
And we tagged
We should have done something. But if there's 10,400, you're going to take them all, put them all in prison?
No.
Sorry to interrupt. This is a complex issue. I don't think we're going to come up with a solution in, 10 minutes, sadly. It's my turn now. They say big boys don't cry. But as we saw this week with the sharing of honest emotion between Prince Harry and Rio Ferdinand, real men do.
Everything can be okay, but I really regret not ever talking about it. Yeah, for the first 28 years of my life, never talked about it.
I, like the millions around the world who saw this clip, couldn't help but feel touched. These two high-profile alpha men were brought together by loss. In Harry's case, his mother, and in Rio's case, his wife and mother of his 3 young children, who died last year from breast cancer. We felt the same when we saw Brendan Cox so bravely speak about Joe Cox's senseless murder. Like these men, I know what it feels like to lose a loved one in a very public way, and what it feels like to have to function every day whilst harbouring a deep emotional wound. However, I'm a woman. I'm allowed to cry. I'm allowed to crumble. The women's movement has been about empowering women so their voices can be heard. We now need a men's movement that empowers men so that they don't think that a stiff upper lip is their only option, no matter how bad things get. Greg?
Yeah, it's interesting. When you look at your own... I mean, I'm one of these guys who cries in the cinema and cries at weddings and all those sorts of things.
I wouldn't have thought that
But
about
that doesn't
you.
make... But when I look back at the difficult times of my life, the crises in my life, I don't think I shared it with anybody. And I think whether that's a male trait that is something biological, or whether it's just that we were all brought up and men had to be like this, but surely you're right. That, I mean, all the people you know who've gone into therapy at times like that, I found it, incredibly beneficial.
Completely.
Incredibly beneficial. But I'm sorry.
No, please.
Yeah, but saying it doesn't change it, does it? Seeing Prince Harry saying it will help because a lot of people will watch that and say, "Yeah, I'm going through that experience and I need some help." The trouble is, where do you get the help from? Is it your friends? Is it your family? Or is it someone outside?
Yes, exactly.
Well, Greg, having watched a lot of your work with the England football team, I've cried a lot. I have to say, you've brought me to... Can I go around the ladies of the panel, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah.
If the man in your life, whether it's your husband, boyfriend, partner, whatever, how much crying is too much crying? How much could he blub before it would start to become an issue? Emma? Or would it not matter?
I mean, if he was going through something horrendous, like the loss of his mother...
Like a
he could cry.
storyline on EastEnders or Coronation
no, but
Street.
hang on, we're talking about
that's not what
different
we're
things. If we're
talking
talking about
about.
serious
Greg talked about a movie.
I mean, I think I've only seen my husband cry a handful of times.
Right.
But he, touched plywood, I'm sure it's very expensive, has yet to have one of those life-altering moments.
Right.
And I don't know how he'll respond to those moments. It's just not happened yet.
I think, as someone who has experienced, horrendous loss, I think we need to get to a point where we allow men to be vulnerable and to show
Well, I think
weakness.
they're vulnerable. I think to show their vulnerability is what you mean.
Yes, to show their vulnerability.
Because I assure you men are vulnerable, don't worry about that.
Yeah, of course, and to show weakness and for society to be comfortable and okay with
But
that.
at what point would there be too much crying? You know, if the quiche
No, but we're
didn't rise
talking
or whatever
about
and he starts
issues.
sobbing.
We're not talking about a sad movie or whatever. We're
I need to
talking
grow.
about real issues. You know, in the case of Prince Harry, he lost his mother
Yeah.
in such a tragic way and didn't talk about it with anybody until he was 28 years old. So think about what that man has been holding for that.
Well, do you think he didn't talk with anybody trained? Should we say that? I'm sure he
No,
spoke
he
to...
said he didn't speak about it.
Well, he never spoke to his brother?
he said he didn't speak about it.
Well, we don't
That's
know
what he said.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that I see your point, June, because for me, everybody is different. So I'm always, like, a bit wary of splitting things into male and female and generalising on those bases, because to me, if you're someone that wants to express emotion and go and seek help, then you will, whether you're a man or a
That's
woman.
not true, Michelle.
And I have, for example, if I think of my sister, I've got a sister, she's a girl. I've never seen her, I've probably seen her cry once in my life, and she's a girl. But then I've got male friends that are obviously guys. I've seen them cry loads of times. I know guys that have had therapy. I know girls that have had therapy. So I don't see this kind of...
I think it's annoying to do generalisations. Obviously, they're not perfect. But I'm sorry, you're not right at all for me on
You're
this. And
not.
the statistics
Not when
don't
you look
bear
at the
it out.
data.
And it's fine to do a sort of, this is what my friends are doing, but we know that suicide is the biggest killer of men under... I think it's under the age of 45.
And I've been impacted by it.
I mean, maybe you want to talk about that, but what I was going to say, just very briefly, if you let me, is that if they don't speak about these issues, it stays inside them. And it's statistically there, what June
And
is
then
saying.
we find out when it gets to the point of no return. So we have... And I think the difference is, when you look at the women's movement, we have known for centuries that women haven't been empowered to stand up for themselves in the workplace and so on and so on. And now that's beginning to happen. That is becoming something that we celebrate. We need the reverse for men, that actually, in terms of empowering women in the workplace, we need to empower men emotionally, because there is something very serious going on.
How do you know it's for real? Because if we come back to one of Greg's area of expertise, football, I think we've got some shots now of Ronaldo, who's a very well-known Portuguese football player, who is sobbing. I mean, fortunately, the guy's all right. You know, it isn't like he had to... But this is because he's got to come off, and I think it was the final as a key game, and this is where he's receiving an award. Sorry, that for me is just... absurd.
No, but
it's not absurd.
What, weeping when you get an award,
No,
Greg?
it's just emotion.
Then we've got an award for Greg
You
Barlow.
shouldn't confuse emotion between that and crisis in your life.
And crisis in your life.
I mean, he was crying.
He's just been
He was
made footballer
crying
of
to
the
come
year.
off because he got to the final
No,
of the Euros.
Second, Greg, he's just been made footballer of
Yes,
the
but
year.
he found it too difficult.
Your point is ridiculous, because if you take what Greg said he'll go to a movie and comfortably cry, but at the most horrendous, tragic moments in his life, that's a time where he didn't cry. That's the problem we have here.
But why? But isn't that a personal choice, though, as opposed to feeling like you're not?
You've got to look at the statistics.
Isn't there a difference in friendships between men and women? I mean,
Completely.
the way that women, the friendships they have and how intimate and close they are. Blokes talk about football and all sorts of things. I mean, I've got really close friends for all of my life, but I would never talk to them about how I felt when my dad died.
I'm trying to... Thank you. Mate, Greg, a rugby player can virtually get his arm torn off. He's never going to cry. You tell me a time you've ever seen a rugby player cry, and they can have their arms ripped out.
But
Come on.
But that's about pain.
theatrics.
That's about pain.
With Ronaldo.
No, but different cultures,
We're talking
different
about
sports.
emotions.
We're
Anyway,
talking about your real life.
Anyway, we've got a great clip of President Obama when he was talking about the Sandy Hook murders.
From every family who never imagined that their loved one would be taken from our lives by a bullet from a gun. Every time I think about those kids, it gets me mad.
You see, you look at Nick's reaction to that.
Well, he's the man who can do something about it.
Nick's reaction is he thinks that's acting.
Well, he's the man who can do something about it.
That's what you think it is. You think it's acting, don't you?
50-50.
Yeah, you see,
Of course he's moved. Of course he's moved. He's the man who can bloody well do something about it.
No, you're coming back
sorry,
to...
last time I looked, he was president.
Yeah, but you've come back to the discussions we've had before, which basically says politicians can solve everything. And we all know that.
No, they can't. They can't.
So
but that's pretty...
when you got divorced, did you cry?
Oh, golly. I think I'd probably cry for the sake of the children, yes.
But what about for yourself?
No, the marriage had come to the end of the road. So, yeah, it was probably healthier for all parties to move on. But no, you cry for the impact on the
Even
kids.
if it's healthy for all parties, you still grieve the loss of that relationship.
Don't you think that the watershed in the UK was the death of Diana, which you've touched on briefly, because that brought about a form of conspicuous mourning, in that you had to be seen to sob.
But not for the people involved.
Oh, look at that video
but this
footage
is the point
where the funeral...
This is the point of what Harry was saying. You know, remember what we were talking about just before we started with the church?
The picture, that picture on the morning after Diana died, when you saw the family going to church and those two boys who'd lost their mother a few hours before, you wouldn't have known it.
No, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. If they're dealing with it their own... I mean, would you rather having them...
No, I agree with that. It isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Why?
Because it's
real. But that's the conspicuous mourning that we all now expect. That's because you didn't sob enough.
Right, I think it's time...
Sob off is what you're saying to me.
I'm not telling you to sob off. But I don't think you will, not publicly anyway.
I'll make him cry later.
Yeah. Now, the one other question I want to ask is this. Are we all missing something about Donald Trump? To the average Brit, Trump is the loudmouth barroom bore who sits in the corner and has an uninformed opinion about almost everything and an easy solution to all problems. Immigrants?
We're going to have the wall. We're building the wall. We're building the wall, folks. We're building the wall.
Terrorism?
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
Foreign policy?
Can you tell the Middle East we're not using a nuclear weapon?
I would never say that. I would never take any of my cards off the table.
How about Europe? We won't use it in Europe.
I'm not going to take it off the table.
But Trump is now ahead of Hillary Clinton in the US opinion polls, and it is possible that he is going to be the next president. So has he got qualities that we just can't see? Or has his success only confirmed what some of us already suspected, that much of the area between the East and the West Coast in the United States is disproportionately full of inward-looking, isolationist rednecks who have fallen for Trump's ignorant, simple solutions? Now, I know the mantra of American democracy is that anyone can grow up to be the president, but surely that was never meant to include Donald Trump.
Well, you asked whether or not you're missing something, and I think that the answer is, yeah, I think that you are. So when we see that introduction video, and I see June hysterically laughing at some of the points that you've chosen on your intro, I think herein lies the problem. There is a huge amount of people that, whether you agree or disagree, they agree with what Donald Trump stands for. They have had enough of what they would perceive as elitism, political correctness. In many situations, they live in a place where their employment has gone, their jobs have been outsourced, they've lost their income. They see a huge amount of the other people prospering while they're left behind. And there is somebody that has come along, he speaks their language, he says the things that is resonating to the pain points that they feel. So there's so many clips that you saw then where he talks about, I'm going to ban Muslims. Now, that sent you off into hysterics, but there are a huge amount of people that are fearful and they are afraid. They are afraid of radical Islamic extremism. And when someone comes to them and says, do you know what, I'll ban Muslims, can he realistically do that? Of course not. But is that feeding into or making them feel better and giving them what they want to hear in the absence of anyone else even acknowledging that there is a problem with that level of extremism? Yes, it is. And what's going wrong here is that people are laughing at them. They are calling them stupid. And I think that people need to be very, very careful to underestimate the voters of Trump, because before you know it, if you keep underestimating them, he's going to end up as your president.
No. Please, I need to cover myself, Greg, please. I'm not laughing at Trump supporters. I'm laughing at Donald Trump. So let's get that right. That's all I want to say, please.
Yeah, Greg, but if you come back, I mean, you know, let's go back to pre-war Germany. I mean, what was Hitler about? Hitler got 30% of the vote by being like Trump. I mean, seriously, by saying those sorts of things. The best... I found this thing from Michael Moore, you know, the film director and commentator. Yeah, he said, this wretched, ignorant, dangerous part-time clown and full-time sociopath is going to be our next president.
And if you read this article, just to come in on your point, and I think, you know, June said she's not laughing at the voters, she's laughing at Trump, but many people are laughing at those voters, and they shouldn't be laughed at. No, I'm saying that many people are, and it feeds into the elitism. And Michael Moore has said the Trump election, which he thinks will happen, and if you read these 5 points, they're broadly summarised as a hatred of Hillary, and it's the last stand of white men who think they've just gone through all these years of a black man running America. Now you're going to have a woman in the White House? No way. Hatred of Hillary because she stands for the establishment. And also, like you were saying, jobs have gone in some key states which are basically called Rust America, which is where, you know, industrial work is never coming back. I mean, Donald Trump can stand next to all these Ford factories and look like he's going to be the man for the worker. But the other reason why Donald Trump appeals to Americans is because when I was there, I was doing a documentary in Oklahoma City. I was sat with these people. We had a lovely day together. It was just happened at Super Tuesday, and they'd all voted for Trump. And they all said to me, he makes me believe I can be rich. And that's what we don't have in this country.
Let me just read the final line in this article. He's talking about when he comes out of a television station, Michael Moore, and he says, a guy came up to him and said, Mike, we have to vote for Trump. We have to shake things up. And that's the danger. That's the danger.
You talk about danger. Look, you're a very well-read and educated and a man I genuinely admire. Pre-war Germany, come on, Greg. You can't seriously liken Trump to Hitler.
Oh, yes, you can.
Absolutely. And hold on.
It's populist rhetoric.
By the way, you're talking about the East-West and ignore the flyovers, the people in the middle of America, as they're known, the flyover. So you've just written off Chicago, which is the third biggest city in the entire country, but that's interesting. Also, if you look... Hold on a second. 126 million people voted, Americans voted in the last presidential election. So let's say he gets a little under half. Let's say he gets a little under half the votes. Say he's not successful. You know better than 40 to 50 million Americans, do you?
Hang on, would you vote for Donald Trump?
Don't know yet. I want to see their policies.
He hasn't got any. That's the whole point. He doesn't have any.
So you want to learn more. Tell me which part of Donald Trump's rhetoric, because that's all we've got so far, because you don't feel we have the policies. No, which part of that draws you in to want more?
Not a lot so far. But I'm not naturally drawn to Hillary Clinton either.
OK, but
I'm not naturally drawn to
Hillary Clinton isn't dangerous.
Well, how do you
whereas
well, because we've seen Hillary
because we know what she's done in government. We know what she what's worrying about Trump is that he's not been part of any of this system at all.
But I find that
he's the complete outsider.
Well, I like
and
that.
When you go through what he says, and you know that he won't say, "I'm not going to."
But also, the thing I find so confusing about all of this is how did Donald Trump become the spokesman for the working poor in America when this is a billionaire that has done nothing but stiff poor workers on all of his developments? This is a man who outsources everything he does. Even Ivanka's clothing range is made in China. I mean, let's get real. Let me finish. Also, having lived in America for 8.5 years, and like you, Emma, I have filmed in the middle of the country, so I haven't just stayed in New York and LA. I've been in the middle of the country. I genuinely, and hey, could be wrong, I genuinely do not believe when it comes to it that America will elect Donald Trump. When you look at the people, the independents that he has to sway to go his way, I just don't see how the numbers stack up for him.
Let's hear from an American who featured in a recent Sky News documentary, Trump, America's next president. There is a question mark at the end of that. America's next president. See if this woman sounds stupid to you.
I didn't say stupid.
Everybody has said something about somebody or something that's not flattering.
But not everybody wants to be president. Is it presidential to speak that way?
Is it politically correct? No, but that's what's so perfect about him. He's not worried about being politically correct. He owns whatever he does. I think that he is going to be a breath of fresh air.
Emma, you groaned. Why?
Political correctness is being conflated with all sorts of dangerous rhetoric. It's happening all over in the far right of Europe now. We're saying what we really think. I'm sorry, you can't dress things up like we're going to build a wall and we're going to kick out all Muslims. Because you know what I do whenever I hear that? And you berated Greg there for pre-war comparisons to Hitler. And of course, OK, you may think it's a stretch, but I always replace the word Muslims with Jews.
OK.
And I always think, if I heard the sentence like, we're going to kick all the Jews out of America,
But Emma...
How on earth could you be intrigued, Nick?
Emma.
I consider you as a friend, and I consider you, as you always say to us, as intelligent, well-read, thoughtful, reasonable
provocative,
people.
fearless.
Provocative, fearless. No, hang on a minute, just let me finish. How can you, as my friend, want to find out more about a man who wants to kick a minority out of America?
And I never normally do this. Can I answer a question with a question?
Yes.
Which I never normally do. If you're white, working class in Idaho or Missouri, you've got no job, you've got no hope of a job,
well,
you haven't got any housing. How is Hillary Clinton going to make your life better?
Oh, yes,
You're
she
not
will.
in that place.
I know you don't have to...
Nick,
No, but at least I can empathise.
But why are you wanting to find out more about Donald Trump? Is it because you actually do, or because you just don't like the idea of Hillary?
I don't feel I'm close enough to either of them yet to say I'm going to vote for either. I don't feel myself naturally drawn to Hillary Clinton. But if you answer that question, come back to you're stuck in Idaho or Missouri or wherever, or Arkansas, you've got no hope with Hillary Clinton.
I would vote for somebody who wants to invest in the country and invest in the people who are actually there.
Nick,
I don't know those policies yet either.
We both don't
but
know.
you shouldn't go for somebody who wants to kick out a minority of a country.
Doesn't Trump remind you of quite a lot of the listeners who ring on your radio station every day?
I love the listeners.
Oh, well, you have to say that.
I love...
But hang on.
I love
someone who has...
I love my listeners.
The thing about Trump is he has a solution to everything, which is not based on policy, it's based on rhetoric.
Yes, I agree with that.
And that's what a lot of your listeners have got as well.
No, the listeners are very wise and well-informed, and I learn a lot from them.
Yeah.
Very good. But what does Clinton bring to the party,
No, let me finish.
That's not the choice. That's not what I was arguing about.
What
I'm arguing about...
Yeah, in a nutshell, Hillary Clinton has spent a lifetime fighting for the working poor. There's lots of things that she has done that Donald Trump... Yes, she has. 8 million children with health care because of her.
In America than there were before.
Let me finish. Also, the other thing is, Donald Trump is just like the Labour Party. It's the sense of... Jeremy Corbyn is very popular with the Labour membership, but he is unelectable with the general public. And it's the same with Donald Trump. He's popular with the Tea Party element of the Republican Party. When he's put out to the American people, I'm sorry, I do not believe
that's not what the polls are now telling you.
The polls have been wrong for the past 2 years.
And we could come back and focus on Hillary, I'm sure, in more detail at another point. But roll up. Anyone out there fancy becoming a peer? To me, one thing is for sure. David Cameron had no choice but to resign after the EU referendum. However, what he did have a choice over is whether to supply an honours list on his way out of Downing Street, i.e. a roll call of people he deemed suitable to enter the House of Lords. It's understood that chief amongst his recommendations are Craig Oliver, his former Director of Communications, his former Head of Policy, Camilla Cavendish, only in post a mere 14 months, and his former Deputy of the Policy Unit, Chris Lockwood, who the PM listed as a personal friend at the Leveson inquiry. Cue howls of cronyism. It's now believed that several of his suggestions have been blocked by concerned civil servants. But why on earth does an ex-Prime Minister have the luxury of recommending his chums for honours on the way out of the job? Especially one that's left the country battling to thrash out Brexit. I have no issue with the honours system overall, but a Prime Minister's resignation honours list? Do me a favour. Big smile there, June.
Yeah, I don't think I am going to do you a favour, actually.
June Sarpong MBE. June Sarpong MBE.
It's got a nice ring to it, doesn't it?
And it's true. Go on.
I disagree.
Okay.
I think there are enough checks and balances in place, particularly with the Lords, because of the past abuses that there have been of the system, to make sure that, you know, somebody who does not belong in there doesn't end up in there now.
You feel that all the systems there, because I'm specifically,
I
just
think
to be
the
clear,
House of Lords Appointments Commission is pretty robust.
I'm specifically talking about the tradition in this country for a Prime Minister to have a resignation honours list. I'm not talking about the honours system overall. And did you know in 2012 that David Cameron created a panel that was expressly to do political honours at his behest? And interestingly, when I was looking into this, our Queen, wonderful Majesty the Queen, any of the ones that are only the honours just in her gift to give, there hasn't been any scandal associated with. It's only when the Prime Ministers have lent on that honours book, recommendation book, that there have been scandals.
But in terms of with David Cameron's list, the fact that it's been flagged up in itself shows you that the system is actually robust enough to deal with situations like this. The last time we had a scandal about sort of a Prime Minister's resignation list was obviously Wilson's lavender list. So
that's not the last time. Tony Blair didn't give one because of the Cash for Honours scandal.
Yeah, but Tony Blair didn't give one, exactly. So my point is, most of the time, the Prime Minister's resignation list, or whenever they leave, it's not complicated.
Nick, let me bring you in on this. Do you seriously think, let's say, and I have nothing personal against any of these people, that somebody who is a director of communications in a government deserves to be ennobled?
Emma, I respect you. You're a journalist, and I'm a great fan of your work, and well-read.
And I'm well-read and I'm reasonable.
I don't know why it's bothering you. I don't know why. It goes on. So someone gets an OBE, someone gets an MBE. I get you. It does whiff a little bit. But
cheese.
Yeah, I get you. But how does it impact your life?
Well, it does.
We pay for those people
in the House of Lords.
We pay for those people £300 a day if they go into the House of Lords. I'm telling you exactly how it impacts my life. And then they look at pieces of legislation or bills that are coming through.
It does.
And I want the best eyes on our laws. You said at the top of this programme. You said at the top of this programme, we've got a serious problem. We're at war now in this continent with terrorism.
Emma,
don't you want the best people?
Can I ask you just a quick question? Don't you think a Prime Minister probably does have a good handle on who maybe deserves an honour and who deserves to be...
It doesn't mean they can't bring something to the party just because they've been chief of staff.
I agree with you 100%. I think you should just get rid of honours being nominated by a Prime Minister because they're leaving. And over the years, there have been some really embarrassing cases. But on most of these people, they've done a job. That's all they've done. They got a job and they did it. That's the rest of us do all the time. You do not get an honour for just being 18 months alongside Cameron.
I agree, and that's why... It's been flagged up.
That's why you shouldn't have it.
And that's why the committee has actually said we are not sure about these people.
But June might be right. If they're stopped, as June said, the system... And it is an if, but if they're stopped, the system seems to work.
Why waste these people's time?
And it's a cross-party system.
I'm also paying for with my tax dollars here. What do you think, Michelle?
To me, you either want an honour system or you don't. And if we choose to have one, and we do obviously have one... Why can't the Prime Minister, on his or her way out, say, look back and go, actually, these are the people that have supported me and brought about... Because no single person runs a country on his or her own. Yes, but what I'm saying is, on your way out, why can't you look back? And by the way, I never thought I'd hear myself agreeing with you, June. This is a new one for me. I'm shocked.
I'm enjoying it.
And slightly speechless with it all. But I do share your view. I think, why not? Why not? Because if the system is there to make sure there's no wrong-uns there that shouldn't be there, or someone that has really, really done wrong or is not good, if that system is there to prevent those things from happening,
but they're not wrong-uns. Somebody who works for him is not a wrong-un.
No, but Emma...
They might still be deemed OK on this list, but it's preposterous that somebody who is leaving Downing Street, especially in the circumstances that we have just seen, somebody who threw the dice, didn't get the result they wanted in a referendum, gets to say...
How much does that colour your view on this?
So, no, it doesn't colour it on this occasion at all. But it doesn't mean that it's in any way normal that you just turn around and go, here are all my closest cronies, you all get to go and have a hearing. I'm saying to you, he's leaving in a crisis and then he's got time to turn around. It's the most odd... It rankles with normal people because they were just doing a job.
I totally get your point there. And also, at the end of the day, he was trying to fill it with more Tory peers so that they can pass more legislation.
Yeah, that's the other thing we've not discussed.
But what I'm saying is that the House of Lords Appointments Commission is cross-party, and actually, in instance like this, there is a system in place to flag this sort of thing up.
Why don't we just get rid of it so there doesn't need to be a system?
You mean the resignation?
Get rid of what?
You mean the whole system?
Resignation. The honour system itself, I think, is one of those wonderful things in our British society.
Well, except...
Hang on a minute. I was just going to say, the Queen is like a benevolent headmistress. It's really lovely. For most people who get these honours actually work in the public sector, don't get paid very well, and go above and beyond in public duty.
Brilliant.
It is an amazing thing. You must have felt so proud, as your family did, for your services to charity and broadcasting. I did my homework.
Thank you, dear.
What I would say is it doesn't fit right that the Prime Minister... I know you're still waiting.
Yeah,
you're still waiting.
I've got a long wait.
This is next pitch. But,
wait.
you know, what I would say is it doesn't smell right, to use the phrase, that you turn around just as you're leaving and you say, hey, mate... Hey, mate.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that. All I'm saying is that there is a system in place.
You know, because director generals of the BBC normally get knighted. When I left, someone said to me, "Do you think they'll still knight you?" I said, "Look, I think it's touch and go whether they'll let me be called Mister."
The Tower. The Tower awaits.
They'd rather have put me in the Tower, I think, than to But honestly, I think the whole honours system needs to be looked at again. I think there are too many people who get honours because they get a job in the civil service and you automatically get an honour for doing that. And I think that's completely wrong. I'm all in favour of an honours system for people who've done exceptional things in society. But too many honours are still going to people who've helped fund political parties.
I don't think we're all going to agree.
Honours even.
Honours even.
He's still waiting for his honour.
Yeah, a long way.
So, you all know that I served my apprenticeship. Do you see what I did there?
Yeah, very good.
But now I'm wondering how much time you all spent doing the photocopying. I'm bored of business, media and politics looking and sounding the same. The people who seem to fill roles at the biggest organisations, political parties and beyond are often so connected it's scary, whether it's family friends, university alumni or just your next-door neighbour. The nepotism is often blatant. There are a stack of people out there who, just because they don't have the right connections or can't work for free, are missing out on their dream careers or are taking so much longer to get there. I want to stop hearing companies, the media or politicians pondering how they can relate to the working class. The answer is simple. Start hiring them too.
It's going to surprise all of the viewers, but in previous lives I've actually been in charge of organisations. I've run, I know, it's extraordinary, television stations. And,
you hide it well.
Yes, I know. Anybody ever gave me any power like that? And I'm going to tell you...
this network?
I was the third employee of Sky News. Yeah, that's how old I am. Yes, indeed.
Bit of nepotism there, then.
Yeah, absolutely. And I need to tell you that when it comes to employing people, and I have fortunately had the wonderful position of offering employment to lots of people down the years, I have a positive discrimination policy. And that is, if you have any family member who's in the journalism business or something like that, you'll almost certainly get the job.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Regardless of your talent?
No. You can't be like... But you... Right. Let's say I'm interviewing for someone to run the news desk of the Sun newspaper. If he or she turns out to be Greg Dyke's son or daughter or whatever, I'm going to think the kid's grown up in a pretty much a media house. They're used to the phones ringing. They're used to discussing all those issues. Let's see if they're bright. They're not going to just get the job because their last name's Dyke or their last name's Barnett, whatever it might be. They're not going to get the job. But the chances are, and very, very, very rarely have I been wrong, the apple never falls far from the tree. It saves you a whole lot of problems. You employ some Herbert who's absolutely useless. You have to biff him out a few weeks later. Just get people who've grown up in the industry. It just saves a lot of effort and heartache.
Can I just start by saying, if one of my children wanted to work for the Sun, I'd be very disappointed. but having said that, you've got a real problem there, because that disproportionately means you're going to employ white people.
Ah, OK, right.
Right? It is
posh white people.
He knows a few. He has
Posh
listeners as well, remember. But the real issue, it seems to me, is that and why we need different systems and structures for employment is largely because the society has changed, and if we just employ people whose dad was a journalist, well, they're going to be white because, 30 years ago there weren't any black journalists, right? And very, very few. And therefore, your policy, which I understand, I mean, I always had a policy of trying to find someone, whoever we're going to appoint, find someone they'd work with somewhere, so you can find out if they're really any good, as opposed to all the stuff.
That's different to their family.
It's different to family, but it's the same sort of danger. It's the same sort of danger that it's people connected somehow through people you know.
Can I just say, though, I'm horrified by what you've just said.
Well, I would hope so.
Horrified, like beyond horrified.
Tell me why.
because of the level of talent that you're missing out on as a result.
They do have to have a level of ability.
No. If you want them to be related to whoever, that's a tiny pool that you're actually choosing from. And if I take myself as an example, and it's funny, Michelle, that you've chosen this subject, because a few weeks ago I was arguing for quotas and you were against me. And it looks like this is exactly what you're doing here.
No. Oh, well,
can I just finish and then you carry on?
I need to come back on this because I don't want you to be confused.
I would take myself as an example. I grew up in Walthamstow. I had no contacts in the media. I had nobody in my family who knew anybody. And I did work experience at the age of 16 at a radio station, and that's how I was able to get into this industry. So with your policies, somebody like me and many of the other people that I started in television with, because actually it's funny, my generation of TV presenters, all of us came from sort of regular backgrounds that didn't have any contacts. We all started as interns, would not be here. And I think there are so many young people who are not getting the breaks and not getting the opportunity because they don't have the contacts and the connections that you are saying that you would only choose from. And then on top of it, in post-Brexit Britain, in order for us to be able to thrive, we have no choice to make sure that we train as many people as possible to be able to contribute.
No, you've got to
so get with it,
You've
Nick.
got to bring fairness into it.
Yes.
You've got to bring
and
fairness.
common sense.
That's the point you're making, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's about
I need
fairness.
to come back on what you just said,
Okay.
because when I strongly disagreed with you the other day when you said about quotas, putting young people onto the boards. I completely disagree. We'll
Or
always
into
disagree.
the companies.
No, I disagree with quotas on every level. So what I've not suddenly had about 10 and I'm agreeing on quotas. What I'm asking for here is because so many people... I'm from Hull, for example.
You're not, are you?
I know. I hide it well. I understand. I hide it well, but I am. And now, in my 30s, I know I should have, and loads of people will hate me for saying this, I should have been a trader in the city. I would have been awesome at trading in the city.
Yes, you would.
I wasn't because I didn't know it existed. I had no comprehension that the city of London existed. I certainly didn't know anybody, and I never would have been able to get in there in a million years. Now, what I'm saying is I use that as an example because when I think of all of this kind of nepotism, stuff like that, and I've hired people too, and I've also had the misfortune of working for people's sons that was only there often because they were people's sons and they were dimwits who really didn't know what they were doing, but the fact that they had no talent was overlooked because they were somebody's sons or even the daughters. I've experienced this firsthand. I've experienced where I know many young people that have never had access to the industries that they would have been good in because they didn't know they existed and didn't have the contacts to get anywhere close.
Well, there is a difference between not knowing something existed and not having contacts.
Of course. So what I'm going to say is my solution, what I would like to actually see, because you're never going to stop people helping the people that they know and care about, and nor should you.
So what's the point?
I would help people that I know and care about. What I want to see is, in addition to this and alongside people's networks, I want to see more programmes into schools where more employers are connected with younger peoples in schools. So in absence of your personal network, you've at least got a network that you can rely on and use.
That's how I got started.
I also think it's a very slippery slope, if you don't mind me saying it. First of all, the media is quite specific. The media is very entrepreneurial. The way you get your breaks is often not orthodox. It's not like doctors and lawyers. You know, I applied to a job and got my first job on a business magazine. Radio-wise, I think I came on your programme. It's one of my very first broadcasting experiences. But writing-wise, I applied for a job and got it as an editorial assistant, which was opening post, photocopying, and then finally some news journalism. That's where I cut my teeth. But what I was going to say
is... downhill, your career.
Yeah. I was sitting next to you on a programme, you judge it. But the thing that I was going to say is, if you judge people by who they're related to, do you also negatively judge them if they're people that they're related to have done bad things or are not in your world or in terms of, you know, not good in the way that you judge them? Do you negatively penalise against people if you don't like what they're from?
No.
Because that's the converse side of this. I don't believe that you should judge people on what they come from. You should only judge them on themselves.
I just think economically we don't have the luxury of nepotism anymore. We just don't have that luxury.
You're describing yourself, is what you're saying, because you came from a journalistic
I
family.
did, yeah.
I mean, I remember your dad ran an agency and all those things. So you come from a journalistic... You're really replicating your own experience. Right? I didn't come from that at all. I brought up in Hayes in Middlesex and... I got into local papers by complete chance.
Right.
And had a good time. And because of that gives me a different view of it.
It does.
But I've been convinced over the years that we have got to have fair and open recruitment policies, and that sometimes you have to be biased. Sometimes you have to say, look, it's
Is
too...
that fair to that kid who gets the job? Simply because they're a woman or they're a minority or they're whatever they are? Is that fair to him or her?
Well, because they'll either make it or they won't.
Golly, that's...
And they'll either got talent...
So you just burn the kid?
No, I'm saying there's an awful... No.
No, but the data shows diversity is better for the bottom line.
Oh, no, I agree.
And what you're suggesting is the exact opposite.
Well, no, but
right, let's leave it there, I think. Let's agree to disagree. Because this week, we heard the sound of smashing glass as Hillary Clinton became the first woman ever to be nominated for president. Let's hope nothing else gets broken.
Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No,
you can't. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. I'm a clever female. I can send an email.
I'm a smart guy. Gonna build the wall wide. I can say pretty much anything.
Can you tell it why?
No.
Neither can I.
Anything you can be. I can be greater. Sooner or later, I'm greater than you.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
My favourite thing line there is, I'm a clever female, I can send an email. Yes. I need to find the person who creates these mashups and buy them a donut. I really, really do. That's made my week.
Absolutely love it.
Doesn't take much.
Right, that's it from all of us. Send us a tweet to say which one of us has been talking sense or not, and if you think there's a topic we should be talking about next time. More straight talking. Join us next week.
Oh my God, look how much has changed since the last time I was on the show. We have a new Prime Minister in England. We have the first ever woman has been nominated as the presidency of the United States, all in the space of a couple of weeks. I have a real burning topic, which I think is really juicy, that I can't wait to debate on the show next week.
Just landed in Gatwick and looking forward to seeing you all on the Pledge on Thursday next week. Bye.